Welcome to the Rising for Women podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Merlo-Booth, and I believe the world will be changed for women when we change how we walk in it. So each week, we're going to have hard conversations. We're going to explore new options. Some of them are going to be hard options, and we're going to have some real, straight talk. We're going to do that because I have faith that women can handle it. Welcome to the Rising Podcast for Women. I'm Lisa Merlo-Booth, your host. Joining me with two other hosts, Dee Marcotte and Arlene Newman. Dee Marcotte is a psychotherapist from Colorado with over 25 years of experience working with individuals and couples on many, many issues. And Arlene Newman is a psychotherapist in New York City. And she also has over 25 years of experience in the business, and she works with individuals, couples, and groups. So welcome, you guys.
Hi.
So today is January 10th. And 4 days ago on January 6th, we had the President of the United States inviting his followers to march down to the state capitol. He told them to be strong, not weak. And he said that he was going to march with them down to the Capitol. And so many of his followers with, Trump hats and Trump flags and Confederate flags marched down to the Capitol, and they stormed the Capitol. At the state Capitol, what was going on at the time is our nation was counting the Electoral College votes to approve, Joe Biden and put him in office. Mm-hmm. And these people stormed the Capitol. Mm-hmm. And as a result of that, there were 5 people who died. And after the storming of the Capitol, the president said many of them were patriots. So I had to say, Dee and Arlene, when I was thinking about this, there were so many things that were going on for me, so many things. And one was, I wasn't surprised. I have to say, this has been 4 years in the making.
Shocking, but not surprising.
Shocking, but not surprising, right? And I absolutely want to just kind of talk a little bit about, what our thoughts were around that event. I'm also very aware that this podcast is called The Rising for Women, and it's about women rising in the world. And when I was watching this, one of the things that struck me is how our nation does with Trump and with lies and with excusing people's behaviors, like I see countless women do in their relationships. And then one of the first people who were killed happened to be a woman who mm-hmm. stormed the state capitol and was shot in the chest or in the neck. I believe she was shot in the neck. And on her Facebook feed, she was saying how we're going to do this and it's going to get wild. And she knew what she was doing. And so we have one of the, first people killed was a woman, and one of the first people storming was a woman. How the hell did we get here? Really? And so let's talk a little bit, certainly in general about what our take is on it. And also I want to talk about what are some of the common threads that we have seen our country go through for 4 years, that we see in our office with women all the time. So what went through your guys' mind when you were seeing this?
Well, I think I was listening to this woman that I'm taking a class with, and it was a little, she was talking about this, not in terms of women, but some of the things she talked about, I think go along with this. And that is the whole idea that boundary violating is justifiable. That, and like, this is an extreme form of that. But then also how to use fear I mean, when I think of the women in our office who are kind of like, well, I can't say that, or I'm afraid, especially if it's heterosexual, that, he's going to get mad or something like that. It's sort of like, this showed the level to which I think we know historically the anger can get to. Yeah. It can get to violence. Mm-hmm.
And the fear, there have been like many Republicans who have cowered to Donald Trump for 4 years. Mm-hmm. And so, and that's the same fear that we see in our offices with women cowering to men who are raging, or men who cower to the women who are raging. This is a very common thing. We just happen to see this play out on a country level, right? But we see this play out in our offices all the time.
Well, and this was overt. So there's the overt, this was terribly overt, and this was the overt version. There were things that happened along the way with things Trump said, Giuliani said, the Republicans that did support him by not stopping him, right, which was the covert part. So I think that's the other thing that happens for women, is that we feel like, well, I can't stand up. I can't have a boundary. I can't, whatever it is I can't do. Mm-hmm. And part of it isn't because of the overt piece. Mm-hmm. It's because of all of these subtler ways. That's the covert part.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right.
In which what? So what do you think has happened for these women that they are now accepting that being silenced is an acceptable way to live?
History.
Can you be specific? Can you be more specific? What? How do you understand that?
Well, I think from the time that we get born into women's culture, the biggest thing we hear is don't upset the male. Don't upset, which equals the authority.
Don't rock the boat.
Don't rock the boat. Don't make them uncomfortable. Don't shine any light on the reality of what might be happening.
And we could say that could be because for so many centuries, the man was the one who we depended on for our survival, right? Mm-hmm. So don't threaten that. We need that to survive. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we're coming from a place of being property. I mean, like there's
being
property.
Oh, yes.
We were owned, so to speak, and had no way, we were blocked from doing anything that would allow us to stand our own 2 feet. And I think that's a generational trauma that still lives with us.
Well, and let me just jump on what Arlene said. We need that to survive. Mm-hmm. So did Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, right? All of them, they needed Trump to survive. They're all, they come up from the 2-year election, the midterm elections, or they got in 4 years, they have elections, and they're very aware that their constituents want, they want judges in seats. They want, Trump in office. And so even though 4 years ago, they were like, this man is dangerous. They went from this man is dangerous to this man's wonderful. He's amazing. We're going to do everything we can to, to make him succeed, because they needed to survive. There is that survival piece.
Absolutely.
Well, and the power of power.
And the power, yes. Oh, totally. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
When you have, if that's where the power is, then, I mean, like you said, if I want this, then I have to be complicit in that.
Right.
So if I want the judge, then I have to be complicit in, oh no, he's great. Yes. And, and in some ways it's the same for women, I think. It's kind of like, can't figure out how to get what I want and need, can't figure out how to get what I want and need. So I have to sort of deny a big part of reality.
Right. I have to put up with this in order to get that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
What is interesting to me, I think there were a lot of positives that came out of this. I think that one of the positives is it did open the eyes of some whose eyes had been closed for 4 years. I think, like everybody has a line, and when they stormed the Capitol, that crossed the line for many people, right? And it also showed Trump for who he is. And for, except for his most extreme followers, which nothing's going to change their mind. But it did show that, and it did get to, okay, we as a nation need to come together and we have to figure this out. This isn't a political podcast, but there is a piece that we need to drain the swamp, and anybody who was, anybody in office who was involved in this has to be taken out of office. Like it has to be. Any police officers, any military, any FBI, anybody who was involved in this has got to be weeded out, or else we're in trouble, because then they're just going to continue to build their base. And yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I think it's bigger than that too. And I think this is the part that does happen with the minority of women. So absolutely what you're saying, yes, like if we're still going to have, it's kind of like if you build your house on the swamp, it's going to sink,
Right.
But it was the difference, because most of the people were white who stormed the White House.
Yes.
Very, like, there was no tear gas used. There was no excessive force used. It was kind of like, when you think of that in comparison to other peaceful protests where people were tear gassed and tasered and a lot of other things, there's also but I think that happens. It's sort of like women might want to stand up, just like somebody might want to, stand up and protest. But if you don't already have a certain kind of privilege, you're in jail, versus these people who were like, oh, we're just going to call that trespassing. So it's like, where's when you're the minority, like women in relationship often, where's the support?
Well, I want to just read something. Heather Cox Richardson. So Heather Cox Richardson is a BU professor and of history. And so she wrote, one of the things that I'm just going to read this quote: "There are questions about law enforcement. While exactly what happened remains unclear, it has emerged that the Pentagon limited the Washington, D.C. National Guard to managing traffic. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser requested support before Trump's rally, but the Department of Defense said that the National Guard could not have ammunition or riot gear, interact with protesters except in self-defense, or otherwise function in a protective capacity without the explicit permission of Acting Secretary Christopher Miller, whom Trump put into office shortly after the election, after firing Defense Secretary Mark Esper."
Wow.
So there is this this piece. If this was Black Lives Matter crowd, people have been talking about that, they would have been shot, killed. They would have, there would have been much more blood shed.
Blood spilled, yes.
Right?
Yes, definitely.
And with this, the officers' arms were tied behind their back. They were told they couldn't do it. I saw some video of an officer who was like being squeezed in the doorway, and he's like screaming, and it was, and another officer was killed because somebody hit him over the head with a fire extinguisher. And then I was reading 2 Black officers reported that they were, because of their race, being called the N-word. He said, we were called the N-word at least 15 times, going in. Because of our race, we were, more targeted. and they were talking about how, you know, their sergeant wasn't there. And it just was there's a lot of information that we have to uncover that feels like this was a setup on many, you know, different levels,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
which is so, you know, so scary.
Yeah.
But
So scary.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully it will not get swept under the rug. That's one of my big fears.
right.
That it's going to get, certain things are going to get focused on, and certain things are just going to get swept under the rug.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and now what they're doing, and this again goes back to one of the things that I see women do all the time is so now they're minimizing it. I think it was Antifa, the lies are coming out, right? Donald Trump says, you know, I love you to these people, we love you. It's like, what is happening? And it gets crazy making, right? And I see women in my office all the time, well, he's a nice guy, or, you know, he didn't mean to do that, he got caught up in it, or
He has a bad temper.
right, and he's got a bad temper because of his family of origin.
As if having a bad temper is something you're born with, like you know, it's like a genetic disability.
Right. And because he has a bad temper, you should be the victim of it, and you just have to like accept that. And
but first, I think often they don't even acknowledge that they're victims of it. I think that they get very detached and they cut off, so they are not really aware of how it impacts on them. I saw that with my own eyes with somebody that was a friend.
Yeah.
I saw her husband really, like, he had a lot of issues. He was whatever he was. I had never seen it before. And I was in the car with them and I saw him really turn on her, and she just froze. And I sat there and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
You've been living with this all these years and I didn't know. It was horrifying.
That's so, gosh, that's sad on so many levels. It's sad on so many levels. And for her, I'm sure she's like, she feels trapped and like she can't do anything because she does have that knee jerk, you know, fight, flight, or freeze. And in that moment, she's like, I can't do anything. What am I going to do? And if I really, you know, called him out on this, it's going to get worse. And I don't want it to get worse. I just want to make it right. I just want to make it stop.
Right,
you know?
Exactly.
Well, and there's an interesting thing about, as you're talking about your friend, because you're there. And so also it seems like there's this idea of having to you can't call someone out in public. Like
even if they're doing it in public, right?
Yeah.
Even though they're shameless about their behavior,
right.
You are keeping that idea going that you can't get exposed. Right.
But I wonder how, you know, when we take that, like that's what's been happening sort of on the national level. And then it happens in relationship where, you know, the other people, we're kind of like, oh my God. And then we don't know what, you know, and then we're complicit because we don't say anything, you know.
Well, here's what I tell my clients all the time when that happens, because it happens, right? They're, you know, they go to their family's house and then somebody in their family, their father's yelling at their mother or something's going on. And they say, look, it's none of my business. And I said, the moment they do it in front of you, they made it your business. And so when something like that happens, you do need to stand up to it, whether it's in the country, whether it's in your home, whether it's with your parents, it doesn't matter. Once they bring it into your world, they made it your business. And so, and I think, you know, for 4.5 years, we've had too many people be complicit on a country level.
That's right.
And Arlene, you said something, you said that caught my ear, that the women, they detach and they cut off. I think that the religious right did that. They like Donald Trump could not be more anti-Jesus like
Right.
than anybody. And
Mhm.
I feel like they detached and they forgot what Jesus was about, which is a kindness and love and forgiveness and treating your neighbor, you know, as your own, and treating the least of your brothers, right, as an equal. And this man has for 4.5 years done the exact opposite of that. But they're like, you know, but these people, they have still supported him because they don't believe in abortion. That's the
That
big
became,
thing, right? He can, you know, he can bully and cause hate and incite riots. But if abortion doesn't happen, then we're going to have to ignore it. We're going to have to close our eyes and detach and cut off to the brutality of him, so that we can live with ourselves. And that's like, we have to look at that. And that's not just Republicans. I mean, there, as a nation,
Mhm.
one of the things that has been sitting with me is I'm watching the real extreme supporters who still, even after this, are still supporting Donald Trump and still believe that there were lies and election frauds and QAnon. He's going to save everybody from the pedophiles, right?
Mhm.
Just so that with all that, when the extreme of that, it's like there has been, it's like a cult, like Jonestown. They all drank the Kool-Aid. They literally killed themselves because this one man they all believed in, despite the fact that he was having sex with all of them and he was doing like, and how many, what's his name, Charles Manson, he had women like who were just, and men following him and believing him. Even when he's talking about killing people, there's something psychological there that we have to, as a nation, look at, where people can get pulled in and pulled in and pulled in, so that nothing can convince them. It doesn't matter how many facts, it doesn't matter what they see. And if we don't look at that, we're really going to be in trouble, because these people are convinced still. Donald Trump owns the, judicial system basically. And they said, no, there's no facts.
Mhm.
And time and time again, I think there was like 40 to 60 lawsuits, and
Mhm.
everyone was like, no, 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 no. And still
Mhm.
Trump says they stole the election, and his people say, yes, they did.
Mhm.
We have to look at that. Like, what is that? And I also kind of tie that a little bit to domestic violence.
Mhm.
With domestic violence, what happens is the victims start literally to think that they're the ones causing their abuse.
because they're
Like,
being
talk
told
about
that.
them.
Well, they're being told, I wouldn't do that if you didn't do this.
Yes,
You are making me do this.
yes.
I,
Which
I
is
that,
what,
remember the verse in a long time ago movie, The Burning Dead,
yes.
and where she says to her friend, he like goes off in front of their friends, and she and the woman friend go to the other room, and the woman's like, what? Why are you putting up with that? And she says, I should have known it would have made him mad.
yes, yes.
Mhm.
And that's what Donald Trump does, like you all of a sudden you turn on me, and it's your fault that I hate you now, and it's your fault that this is where we're at.
Mhm.
And he lies and lies and lies. And even though, half the nation is like, he's lying, it's like, no, I believe it.
Mhm.
And
Well, because they're hearing from whomever they're
Sources.
listening to, right? I mean, to me, that I was talking to a friend of mine about this, and I said, how did this happen? And he said, back in the 80s, there
yes,
used to be a law
Cheney
about
changed
truth.
it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Who changed it?
Dick Cheney.
He's the one who changed it.
Yeah.
I think
Mhm.
that has to come back. We have to bring that back, because they're believing what they're hearing, but there's nobody policing that. There's nobody saying this is all lies. Nobody's telling them. So they think we're lying. We think they're lying. It's crazy. The facts are the facts. Somebody has to be able to say, no, this is not the fact.
This is not true. Yeah.
This says the Federal Communications Commission required American television and radio broadcasters to present both sides or all sides of any political or social issue. It became nicknamed the Fairness Doctrine. The Reagan era eliminated this rule.
Okay, the Reagan era.
Which was never reinstituted in subsequent decades under either party. And then on top of this, a subsequent Trump era 2017 decision loosened ownership restrictions on stations. Many stations nationwide now more easily owned by the same conglomerate such as Fox News. Whereas before you couldn't have one, source.
Have this block. Yeah.
Right. And that is.
Well, and then you add to it though, which of course Trump has done, which it really was part of the inciting of the riots, was social media.
Yes.
Right.
Now finally they stepped up, but.
Well, and that's probably going to go to court at some point because of freedom of speech.
Absolutely.
And fortunately, they've done that. And now what's interesting, so the other piece that is playing out now that also coincides with relationships is accountability.
Yes.
So now we have, two different camps kind of. You have, Mitch McConnell saying we should not be trying to impeach this man because that's just going to further harm our country. And so they're looking at the 25th Amendment and impeaching. As far as not impeaching this man or not punishing him, rather than just letting him go, is going to set a precedent for our country. And it sends the message to everybody that you can get away with this. And Trump has already planted the seeds of that early in his I'm a president. You can't charge me with anything. I'm untouchable. I can pardon myself, all this. If we do this, we are so opening the gate to having dictators run this country, right? And the piece around should we, I believe it's imperative that we go to either the 25th Amendment because he's spinning out of control and he's basically not running this country now anyway. He's not showing up anywhere. Or we impeach because you have to. They stormed the castle. He absolutely incited. I think it's like treason. I don't even know. Forget about. Yeah.
I think it's treason. I think he needs to be tried for treason.
Right.
And all the senators and congressmen who supported him. It's treasonous behavior. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it should be. We should be looking at a criminal offense, not just impeaching him.
Absolutely.
And I see this in relationships all the time. Like, women have a really hard time holding men accountable, right? And I think it goes back to fear and self-preservation and not wanting to rock the boat and et cetera, et cetera. But when you allow people to treat you anyway and you don't hold them accountable and there are no consequences to that treatment, there is no reason for them to stop that mistreatment.
Well, and it's a short term kind of thing. It's sort of like right now, if we just let it go and then we can pretend it's gone. But just like if there's no impeachment, he could run for president again.
Right.
And so there's a long-term consequence that I think the country isn't thinking about in terms of this, but that women don't think about.
Right.
In terms of the relationship. Like you said, if I let this go and I just keep treating it as this moment, then I'm not realizing what the long-term impact is going to be.
Right. And you're not realizing how many further moments you're creating for yourself down the road. And we have to learn that.
Mhm.
We just, because it's about how do you create a better, safer future for you, whether we're talking about a country or we're talking about, in your home.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think that, and it's not about punishment. It's not about, retaliation.
Right.
It's simply about, listen, here's where I'm standing. Here's what's okay. Here's what's not okay. You cross the line. And when you cross the line, here's the consequence to that.
Mhm.
Right. You just, whether we're talking about the country, you just incited,
Mhm.
right? Treason. Basically, you incited insurrection. And so there's consequences to that. And it's not just, oh, thank goodness that you incited it, 10 days before you're leaving office.
Right.
Whew, we'll just get rid of you.
Mhm.
That doesn't do anything. That's not okay. And even after they stormed the Capitol, he was still inciting them.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not like he was like, oh my God, I didn't realize this was
That
happening.
this
Like,
was going to happen.
right,
Right.
right.
Well, it's why they closed his social media account.
Yes.
Because he was continuing to incite. That's sort of right.
Mm-hmm. And he tried to jump on 5 different Twitter accounts
Yeah.
to get to his people. Like,
and went through somebody on his staff.
right.
And
what I don't understand is there was so much information in the media prior to this happening saying it's going to be a wild ride. January 6th, we're going to have this. We're coming
we're ready
armed.
for combat.
Yeah. I mean, I knew, and I'm not even a specialist around this, and I knew that, like, so there's a lot of collusion here. There's a lot of complicity here. And there's a lot of, now all of a sudden, oh, we need to heal the nation. And Republicans are like, no, we have to let's just move on.
Right.
For 4 years, you were at odds and you would not heal the nation. And we cannot turn a blind eye to that. That's like in your home, you have somebody who cheats on you for 3 years and they say, okay, now I'm done. And you're like, well, wait, that hurt me. Well, I don't want to talk about it. Are you going to keep bringing that up to me?
When are you going to get over it?
When are you going to get over it? Right.
But there's a piece I want to go back a little bit to the piece about the collusion, because, I can think of several women who they make they finally get a little empowered. They say, I'm not going to take this. But then it's not just in the relationship, but then it can be their kids if their kids are grown. It can be the friends. What are you doing? Get off his back. What are you so I think, again, there's that piece of like why did this happen in the country, and why does it happen in relationship? And part of it is, again, that idea of there can be no support if you don't, like, it's really being conscious about, now, where am I going to go if I'm going to do this?
Yeah.
Because probably this little bubble that I'm in of friends and that kind of stuff, they're probably not going to be supportive.
Yeah. That's so sad. I've seen that so many times, especially with affairs. With affairs, I've seen that. I've seen, mothers saying, well, he's a good guy, go back to him, when he's cheated for years, or, brothers or sisters saying, you know what, get over it. Everybody cheats, or so what, or, hey, what have you done? You've gained a lot of weight. You haven't, like, all these things where it's like, oh my God. Like, and so I think you bring up a great point. Where's your support system? And first, going back to what Arlene said in the beginning, is you have to dare to see what's right in front of you. You've got to first have that internal reckoning, like, wow, this isn't okay. I don't like what's going on. I'm not liking how I'm feeling. This just isn't okay. Now that I have that in my consciousness, now what do I want to do about it? And what am I going to need in order to be able to do that? And part of what I'm going to need is support, right? And that's as true if we're talking about our homes, or we're talking about work, or we're talking about in the country. If you have supported Trump for 4.5 years. And now you're thinking, whoa, this got out of hand. What am I doing? But all your friends are huge Trump supporters. You got to think, okay, what do I need to do here? I'm going to need to start, dipping my toe in different support groups here. And I'm going to have to, find a way to find my voice where I'm not going to just get beat up about it. And that can be a process.
They
I
have
also
to
think
dare.
oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, you have to dare to be separate, to separate yourself from your familiar group and find others. It takes a lot of strength.
Yeah. It really does.
Conviction and self-respect to say, no, this crossed the line.
And what I would say, you're so right, Arlene. And I would say the way you get that strength is inch by inch. And so maybe you start by not agreeing, like you stay neutral, right? Instead of cheering with them. I mean, if we're talking about the Trump, instead of cheering with them or saying, yeah, you just go a little more quiet until you can build your strength up. It's inch by inch. Then it's going to be like, well, I'm not so sure I agree with that one. And as you get a little bit stronger and you see who meets you and you see where you can find, other people, and you start to go outside a little bit more. And if we're talking about in your relationship, for example, with affairs, you're going to test the waters, and you're going to see, when I speak to this friend, is she or he supportive of me, or are they telling me I should just leave, or I should just stay, or I should ignore it? And if they are, then I'm going to pull back. I'm not going to go to that one. Or I'm going to say to them, hey, it doesn't help me when you do that. What would help me is this. And then you see if they're going to meet you or not. But you test the waters and you start tuning in, like, this doesn't feel good. This does. If I'm thinking of leaving, but I know my mom would be really upset if I left, I'm not going to talk about leaving to her because I'm already scared to leave. So I'm going to I got to first get centered in me, and then I got to find my peeps, so to speak.
I think they also have to stand up to shaming, to being shamed, to being dismissed. The things we talked about a few weeks ago, about what men can often do and women are so vulnerable to being shut up.
Yeah.
And to be shunned. I mean, I think that's one of the things that you're talking about with the dismiss or that sense of, I don't know where I belong then. Right. And that's why this finding the other support piece, I think, is so important, because you can be shunned then. And that's a horrible and very scary feeling.
Yeah, at a very primal level, that's a terrible.
Right.
If you're the group that you affiliate with rejects you because you don't go along with how they see things.
Yeah.
I also wonder. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dee.
I also wonder, just as we were talking about this, what went through my mind is, and I've used your quote many a time, Lisa. You're trying to make a birthday cake out of a crumb.
Yeah.
And so I wonder how much in terms of the country, and also for women in relationships, how much is staying with the glimmers of the relationship I want, or the thing I want to believe in, or that sort of stuff. And you see this little lip of that. And then you kind of like you were talking about, then I only look at that little piece, even though all this other shit is going on.
Right.
Yeah. And so there's a place of not looking at the reality, because I want to keep that crumb that it will really become, but I've seen it, so it will really become what I want it to become.
Right. I say to women all the time, don't ever, ever, ever fall in love with someone's potential. Because you know how many people never reach their potential, My
first husband.
Yeah.
Totally, I married potential.
Yes.
I could see that little blip here and
Right.
there. Now that was 99.9% of the time, that's not what it was.
Right.
Yeah.
But that glimmer.
Oh, but I kept going, no. And I think there's also that part that we learn as women that is not helpful, but for me,
Yes. It'll be different with me.
It'll be different with me. I'm somehow special. I can cure him, heal him, help him, whatever.
Yes.
And then this potential will show up. And it's like, no.
Right. Right.
But
So
it's also part of that whole codependent thing where we're going to rescue them rather than finding the potential in ourselves and really trying to realize that.
Yeah. One of the other things I want to talk about a little bit is forgiveness. Because we have, on a country's wide scale, there's going to be a lot of mea culpas, and we're already seeing it, and people saying, oh my gosh, I didn't realize he was this bad, et cetera, et cetera. And in homes and relationships and in jobs, people do bad things, and they want to repair it, and we have to figure out forgiveness. And what I would say, and again, I go back to affairs are just the easiest example. They're just so pretty black and white. But there's a difference between, so if somebody is coming to you honestly remorseful and truly humbled and really seeing it, absolutely give them grace. If they're coming to you like insincere, or they're doing it because they have to, or they're justifying it, they're rationalizing it, they're defending it, then you have to recognize the difference in that. You have to know, and part of this is instinct and feeling, and part of it is just seeing, but you have to be able to recognize sincerity and remorse and not be fooled by the other. So, some people will be like, I'm sorry, I said I was sorry, can we get over it?
Right.
No.
Or the manipulation. You said, I'll do this and this and this.
What do we want to do with Mitch McConnell, who is now talking as if he's on the right side of things and always has been, and
right.
And he sounds sincere. How do we deal with that?
I think that's going to be with time. I think he has to be held accountable for what he did for 4 years.
And do you think he will be? Do you believe that he will be? Do you think anybody's going to hold him accountable?
I think our nation has a hard time doing that, just like people do, just like, and this is what is really tough, because accountability and consequences is not about punishment. Now, certainly some people can use it as punishment and retaliation. That is not at all what we're talking about. That's not coming from a healthy place. But it is a healthy place, not only for you, but also for the person you're holding accountable. It's healthy for them. It's an opportunity for growth. If they just say to Mitch McConnell, okay, great, we're so happy you're on our side, now let's heal, he is not going to get it. He's not going to grow. Our nation's not going to grow. They really have to figure out, what are our consequences for you holding bills up for 12 years? Like, we have to really look at that, and we got to start figuring out, like, putting plans in place, one, to protect that from happening again, but also, what do we do with somebody who has literally blocked our government from moving forward?
Right, just democracy in general.
Yes.
And who came out and said, before he no longer held this position, that he would block anything else.
Everything, right?
Everything coming from the other side.
Right.
He's elected. He's elected to represent the people,
right?
Not his agenda. So we have to hold people accountable for their self-interest.
Yes.
Putting the self-interest.
But how do we do that? Because I think for me, this got confusing. So you started with forgiveness, which I have trouble with anyway. I'm not big on the forgiveness word, so I know I have that. But then we went to accountable. So I think for me, and I'm guessing for people who are listening to us, well, what does that mean? How do I work towards forgiveness, or whatever we want to call that, and hold someone accountable?
That's such a great question. And as you're saying that, so let me rephrase that. How does somebody build trust back?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that's more accurate. Forgiveness is an individual thing, and it's for you, so that you don't get, it doesn't burn, it doesn't like eat you up, right? Something, something major happens and you're hurt, but you don't want the rest of your life to have that, play out in your life. So forgiveness is about you. That,
Mm-hmm.
this happened to me. I realize it happened to me. I'm forgiving that person. That does not mean I forget it. That doesn't mean that I'm even going to be friends with them. I can forgive them and not be friends with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things I can do. But I guess more accurately, what I'm talking about is, so we have people, somebody cheated on you and they had an affair and they're like, I'm so sorry. Or we have our nation right now. I've blocked, democracy for 4.5 years, but now I see the light. I'm so sorry. And let's say he really is. Let's say he genuinely is, right? What do we do with that? We can have compassion for his struggle for 4.5 years. We can have compassion that he's all of a sudden sees the light and he's feeling sad. And if we truly believe him, while still holding him accountable. Those two are not mutually exclusive. You can have compassion and humanity, and you can extend them grace while you hold them accountable. And I think the way that you earn trust, the way they earn trust, is not only are they remorseful and you feel it and they're genuine, but then their day-to-day actions line up in such a way to back up those words.
Exactly.
And
yeah,
we haven't seen that yet.
And that's the thing I think that happens certainly in my office, where women believe the words,
yes,
but there's no action that goes through it.
Right.
And it's kind of like without the action, and then it's not trying to get them to, it's if there's no action, I think this is the consequence part. What are you going to do in the face of no action?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And not punitive wise, not retaliation. It's just, well, here's where I'm standing. You're saying that you're sorry. You're saying you never do this again. And then every time we go out, I see you flirting and I see you making comments, and I can't live with that. It's not working for me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and so, and as a nation, it's the same thing. So Mitch McConnell, we don't know what he's going to do right now. All we know is what he's saying at this point. And as a nation, how do we get trust? How do we trust this man who for 4 years blocked democracy? Actually, not even 4 years, 12 years, he blocked democracy, right? And Lindsey Graham, and so I think that our nation, like too many people in our nation right now are talking about, we just need to move on and heal, which is what we hear in our offices ad nauseum about affairs. I'm done. I left her or I left him. Can we just move past it? And I would say, no, that's a very, very, very dangerous precedent. It's dangerous in your relationships at home, and it's dangerous in our country. And that is not coming from a hateful, retaliatory place.
Well, and I think consequence, a lot of times what I think the consequence and punishment got put together through how to discipline children. What is the consequence for the fact that they didn't do blah, or they did do blah?
Yeah.
And so I think it got skewed, because like the consequence to driving the speed limit is you get to go home and you don't have a ticket and you don't have to pay a lot of money. There's a positive consequence to following the rules of the road. Yep. And there's a not so positive consequence if you don't. And so that's kind of like, that's just true in life in general. Right.
Like natural consequences.
Yeah, they're positive and they're negative depending on what's going on. Yeah. But we go ahead.
Well, there would be natural consequences if the person didn't get elected. However, that doesn't happen.
Right.
So what other consequences
Mhm.
are there for somebody like Mitch McConnell
Mhm.
Mhm.
if he
And
continues to get reelected?
Mhm.
I think our world has to our government has to take a hard look at that, and Biden and the Democrat, everybody's going to have to take a hard look, and there's going to be pushback like, oh, you're just doing that, you say you guys want to heal, but you're just
Mhm.
coming after us.
That's right.
And that's like manipulation and bullying and trying to scare the other people into not holding you accountable. And
That's right.
accountability is vital to healthy relationships. Accountability is vital to healthy governments. You cannot have a healthy government if you don't hold people accountable. It's absolutely impossible to do.
Mhm.
And we need to get out of this idea of, I don't want to be mean, or I don't want to be, I don't want to rock the boat here, or we just want to get past it.
Mhm.
Getting past it is not going to happen when you just put it aside and pretend it didn't happen.
Mhm.
That doesn't get past
When
it.
you kick the can down the road, that's
Yeah.
not really. That's
But I
not
think you made a good point, Arlene, in that because I hear this a lot. Well, but what would be consequences? I mean, I hear that in relationship all the time.
Mhm.
Well, they do this, that, or the other thing. And so I think it's kind of interesting that we don't have an idea of consequences.
Well, I think he should lose his position, but right.
Right. But I mean, even in relationship, it's
Yeah.
kind of like like women will say, well, I don't know what I would do on my side of the fence in face of that.
Right.
And then I give them like 25 options.
Yes.
And, but then it's the idea of, oh, I can't do that. I can't, it's kind of like, well, how come?
He'll get too angry. He'll be too
Right.
mad. That's going to be too uncomfortable.
So
That's
it's
not
just the
fair.
same thing. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the same cycle. Mhm.
Which brings us back to, it's really about a grounded, powerful strength.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
It
It's
always
not,
comes back to that.
it goes
always
back,
comes
yeah.
back to that.
It's a grounded, powerful strength. It's really about, to your core, you need to know,
That's
this
right.
is what I deserve. This is what's okay. This is what's not okay. Our nation, to its core, has to be, this is what we stand for. This is what's okay. This is what's not okay. And when this is broken, this is what we do. And it's not personal. It's not revenge. It just is. And so, and women have to do that as well. If you're going to get upset because I'm going to hold you accountable for you yelling at me, so be it.
Mhm.
Because let me be clear, I will not be in a relationship with somebody who yells at me. And if you can't fix that or change that, I'm going to be incredibly sad. And you're no longer going to be in my inner circle.
That's
That's
right.
how it goes.
Mhm.
And it goes back to that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right, so we're back to working on how to get there, how to get that powerful strength that you never abandon. That's your GPS,
Yes.
and you never ever forget that.
Right.
That's your guide,
Yeah.
Mhm.
not
And
what your partner says to you.
absolutely. And we saw our nation lost sight of that.
Mhm.
We had a president who said, we need you strong, not weak.
Mhm.
Well, let's be very, very clear. Strength is not aggression.
Mhm.
2-year-olds can be aggressive. 2-year-olds can throw temper tantrums, right? That is not strength. And we had countless men and women who cowered to a bully for 4.5 years.
Mhm.
And he is puffing up his chest, thinking he's so strong, and everybody's cowering around him. And it is not, if you want a grounded, powerful strength, is you have to stand up to the lies. You have to, and there's strength in numbers. You get as many numbers as you can. But what happened in these past 4 years was a slow decline. Actually, it wasn't even that slow. It was a
Even that
warp
slow,
speed
but
decline, right? Of people cowering like we see in our homes, of people not setting limits, of people shrinking, of people dismissing, of people spinning lies. Even when they would see him say it himself, they would spin it and they'd say, that's not what he meant. That's not really what he said. And like crazy making. And
well, and I think a piece that, go ahead.
for all the years, the Democrats really did very little in
Very
terms
little.
of holding them accountable for
Mhm.
all the lies and all the bad behavior from the beginning, before he even got elected, the way he treated Hillary.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Nobody stood up and said, that's not acceptable.
Right.
We can't have this man even running for office with this kind of behavior.
I mean, some people did. There certainly were people who were saying this man's crazy. It's just
Mhm.
not enough
Not
and not
enough,
strong
not
enough.
enough. No,
Right.
not as a group,
Right.
not as a country.
Well,
They
and the
didn't stand up.
Republicans should have done that.
They
They
should
should
have,
have,
Exactly.
everybody should have done it.
Mhm.
And
everybody
nobody
should have.
did.
Right.
And instead, they identified with the aggressor, as we
Yeah.
like to go back to that term, right?
Right. It's like
Mhm.
you want to be part of the popular, in with the popular kid. And so you're going to do whatever they need to do, thinking that he's going to respect you, not realizing that he just has more contempt for you
Right.
because you
Because you're
cower to
being
him.
used.
Mhm. Mhm.
He just uses you as a pawn. He's not respecting you. He's not happy. Even, one of the things they said with the people when they were storming the Capitol, they said that Trump was in the White House and he was excited about it, but he was upset that they looked low class. He doesn't have respect for you. He has contempt for you, and he uses you to get what he needs. And so, yeah, it's really, it's hard, but we need people within those particular groups to also stand up. We need women to stand up against women. We need men to stand up against men. We need, Republicans to stand up against Republicans, Democrats to stand up against Democrats, and across the aisles on all of those levels.
Mhm.
We have to dare to rock the boat. And we don't do it as bullies.
Right. We don't hit violence with violence.
You don't hit violence with violence. It's a matter of fact. You hear somebody talking down, you're like, hey, that wasn't cool.
Right. Mhm. Mhm.
Right? You don't like become a bully back.
Mhm. 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 And living through, even it may not look that overt again.
Yeah.
Like I can remember some years ago, we're having dinner, and I let a couple things go that my friend's husband said to her, and then finally I'm like, no.
Yeah.
And so I said, wow, for me that's really mean.
Mm-hmm.
And he was silent and
Yeah.
steaming the entire night. Now I have to sit with that on the other side.
Just so
that
uncomfortable.
Not all calm and happy,
That's
and
right.
I didn't do the womanly thing.
Yeah, the bad energy, right? The bad vibes that you get for
Yeah.
calling them
Oh
out.
my God. So I think that's the other part of, as we're talking about accountability wherever it is that we have to grow our window of tolerance to make people uncomfortable when we are stating these kinds of truths or realities, or what's okay and not okay in terms of how you treat me and that kind of stuff.
When you say do you mean we have to grow our window of tolerance of other people being uncomfortable when we stand up?
Yes, I'm sorry, that's what I mean. Thanks for
Not tolerance for bad behavior.
not tolerating.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad you
Yeah. Right, because it is uncomfortable when you stand up. It can be like walking on broken glass.
Mhm.
And people can get upset that you're standing up.
Absolutely.
And you'll have many people say that was none of your business. And your friend, actually, she could have said to you, D, that was none of your business.
Right.
And you have to like take that deep breath in, hold yourself, and we need a new nation. we really need radical new relationships, and it's going to take a lot of radical new change. No way to do it. But what's going on right now is killing us.
Right. And I think part of it is recognizing that there's this kind of more global place that we're looking at, but we are also talking about the fact that this change has to come from each individual. We have to become aware. We have to like stay steady. We have to be able to say, I got to say that's not okay with me,
Right.
and that kind of stuff. And so like a part of it has to be that internal GPS,
Yeah.
Mhm, mhm. And I think for women in particular in relationship, we numb ourselves to that place where we're like, but that wasn't okay. And then, but we've learned to like, okay, we're not going to pay any attention to that, which
Right.
is pretty much what we've done in the country. So it's kind of like, no, we have to pay more attention to that feeling.
Yeah.
Mhm.
When the hair on the back of your neck goes up, or when something just like goes right through you and you're like, ick, you have that ick feeling, or
That
you
ick
have,
feeling.
or you feel that moment of shame because of how somebody just spoke to you. Like,
Mhm.
you got to tune into that, and you got to be really clear that that's not okay. It's not okay for others to do it to you, and it's not okay for you to treat others like that either. We're not,
Mhm.
this isn't about holding others to a higher bar than you.
Correct.
It's holding everybody to the same bar.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
All
it's not
right.
okay for you to treat yourself that way,
Mhm.
and not to use all those misery stabilizers that we talked about to numb yourself
Mhm.
from really feeling what it's like to be the effect of
Mhm.
being mistreated.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I see women doing that all the time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They don't have the skills, or they don't have the hope that things could be different.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So they just turn away, and they go shopping, or
Right.
they go running, or they go to the gym, or they have affairs, or whatever it is that they do.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, I'm very curious to see how our country's going to roll
Right.
out of this one.
Yeah.
um,
Here's the opportunity. What will we do?
what will
Mhm.
we do? Uh, I this just came up to me. One of the things I would challenge people to do over the next, as we're watching our nation kind of
Rumble with this,
rumble. That's a great one. Yes.
as Brene Brown would
I,
say.
I love that. I love that.
Right.
As we're watching our nation rumble, I would love to have people who are watching this watch our world around consequences, and watch what you think around punishment versus consequences versus retaliation versus how our nation is labeling healing by ignoring versus healing by let's deal with this, and start slowing down yourself and tuning into what is it that you think. And if we were to do honest consequences coming from a place of humanity and grace, but also tough love, so to speak, what feels fair, regardless of whatever side of the aisle you're on. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on.
Mhm.
What feels right?
Mhm.
And just watch our nation, how this is playing out.
Mhm.
What do you guys think? What do you guys?
I think what feels right is great if you're really on touch with your deepest sense of what you feel,
That's true.
because you could feel a lot of things are right based on how you grew up and your culture, and that may not
Yeah.
really be right. There has to be some consensus on what is right and what the truth is, and what rules are we playing by,
Yeah,
because I think that's gotten very muddled.
Mhm.
that's
You
so
know,
true.
the idea that we have a constitution that we're supposed to be guided by, I think that's not been really going on. People have been going on um, looking for power and looking for money.
Mm-hmm.
Greed and power, I think, have been the underpinnings of a lot of this stuff,
Yeah,
and that doesn't get talked about.
Mhm.
and looking to win.
Looking
Yeah,
to win, well, to win power and money.
right.
Whoever gets the most wins.
Yeah.
I also
So,
think we
so I
have to
love
all
that.
look.
So sorry. So fix that for a moment, Arlene. Fix the challenge. Clean it up.
I think you have to go. I think you have to look at the big picture.
Mm-hmm.
Come out of yourself. It's not just about you.
Mm-hmm.
It's really about us. What do we all need? to make it work for all of us. It can't just be about you.
Yeah. So, okay. Watch the role of consequences, lack of consequences, under the umbrella of the Constitution and what's best for a nation, not for Republicans, not for Democrats, not for independents, but what's best for a nation. And really observe what that process, how that process folds out.
And if we bring it to the individual level, we could say what's best for me, what's best for the family, our relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
that's
watch
just
the and
ahead.
watch the pattern of not wanting to give consequences or wanting to punish. We want to stay out of those extremes. Healthy consequences are required for healthy relationships.
And integrity,
Yeah,
having integrity.
always the foundation.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think the other thing to look at in this, especially as you're looking at consequences versus punishment and all that kind of stuff, is if you kept pulling the layers down, what are you really afraid of?
Mm-hmm.
Because that fear is the thing that's either going to push you towards punishment or push you towards not having any consequences.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay. I'll be very interested to see how this all unravels.
Yes.
So,
We're living in interesting times.
we
Really?
are absolutely living in interesting times.
Yeah.
Woo. Well, as always, thank you so much for listening to the Rising podcast. If you found it interesting, pass it along. If you hated it, send us emails. Let us know what you don't like. If you loved it, let us know what you like. Would love any feedback that you have to give. And here's to hoping that our nation truly heals, doesn't just throw things under their carpet.
Mm-hmm.
And here's to families everywhere healing and getting stronger and better through a grounded, powerful strength.
Mm-hmm.
Happy 2021.
What a way to start the year.
Really?
Right? I saw on a post, 2021. Okay, it's been 5 days. I want my refund.
Yeah.
Thank you again for joining us this week. And always remember, you have the power to change the world for women by changing how you walk in it. I challenge you to choose one way to stand in your grounded, powerful strength this week and be part of the ripple of change.